Yeah, thanks everyone. Welcome to the Asian Civilisations Museum and welcome to our special showcase Veil, the Burden Dance. Um, Today, we have a talk by Laura Miotto and Lim Shu Min, who will be taking you through this really special showcase that we have. Allow me to just introduce them. Laura and Shumin are members of the interdisciplinary collective System, which also includes sound designer Ramesh Krishnan over there. And they are responsible for this amazing work we have here in this gallery. I'm Conan. I'm a curator here at the museum. Uh, so this is a special showcase that's presented alongside our current temporary exhibition, Body and Spirit, which you can see on the second floor. The stickers you have will allow you entrance into that exhibition as well, so you can go after this talk. So Systrom's past works include Nature Remixed, a community arts residency at the Singapore Botanic Gardens, and Veil, a sonic walk, which was in 2021. And this is the predecessor to the current work, and I'll let the two of them talk maybe a bit more about it later. So individual introductions. Lim Shu Min is a designer whose work includes visual identities, interactive media, and exhibitions. She has completed projects for the Arts House, the U.S. Embassy, the NUS Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum, and the Singapore Art Museum. She previously worked for GSM projects and holds a BFA in graphic design from Rhode Island School of Design with a concentration in history of art and visual culture. Laura Miotto is an award-winning exhibition designer and educator with 20 years of experience as a creative designer and architectural designer. Among her exhibitions are the Borneo Cultures Museum, Malaysia, um, the Post-Human City for the NTU Center for Contemporary Art, the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum at NUS, and the Living Galleries at NGS. She's also associate professor at NTU, where she co-directs a master's program in museum studies and curatorial practices. So today's talk will look at the craftsmanship of the Kavadi that's used in the Thaipusam festival in Singapore. That was just over on fifth festival. And so without further ado, I will hand over the time to our speakers, Laura and Shumin. Please take it away. Thank you.
Hi. So I'm Shumin. I'll begin the talk and then Lara will continue after. So just a brief introduction. System is Lara, me, myself, and Ramesh. And this project Vel actually started as a Vel's a Sonic Walk, which was a web app experience that we created because the Thaipusam procession couldn't take place when the COVID pandemic happened. And so it's actually a digital app or experience that you can listen to from while walking from Perumal Temple to Tendayuthapani Temple, which is the route that the devotees take during the Thaipusam procession. And so we're very honored that the museum, after seeing that project, invited us to create something for this space here, which is a beautiful, beautiful space. And we decided that we would focus a little bit more on the Kavadi as the object that these devotees carry during Thaipusam. And we're really looking into the material culture of these objects. And during this process, we worked with various members of the Thaipusam community, the Kavadi bearers or owners, the Kavadi makers, as well as the Kavadi piercers. And so to begin, maybe we can start to just move in here. Maybe you guys want to gather in here.
Yeah, perhaps it's past is better if you come closer because I think what you need to show is around here.
Yes. So the first thing that I'll introduce you is the veil. Anybody here familiar with the veil? It's the title of our exhibition, Veil. We don't have the soundscape playing right now, but actually, if you listen carefully, when you're in the space later on, you will hear the participants of Thaipusam chanting or singing Veil. And Veil actually refers to the divine spear of the Hindu god Murugan, which Thaipusam is dedicated to. And this Thaipusam actually commemorates the day where Murugan's mother, Kavadi, gives him this bell, which he uses to defeat evil forces. So you guys can maybe come a bit closer if you want to take a look. But this divine spear, you will recognize during Thaipusam as the spikes that the various devotees pierce on their bodies and also carry in the Kavadi. And one of the very first spears that they will pierce is actually the forehead spike, which you see here. And it has the shape of the veil. So maybe I'll just talk a little bit more about Murugan. So Murugan is also known as Kartikaya or Skanda in classical Hindu literature. He's a warrior, a leader of a Hindu army, and he's worshipped very much by people of Tamil Nadu. And this community brought this practice of worshipping Murugan and also of Thaipusam to Singapore during the colonial era. And so, for example, the Tenduyuthapani temple, which is the temple at Tank Road, where this Thaipusam procession ends, is one of these temples here that were built that's specially dedicated to Lord Murugan. And so, the veil is not just it's a divine veil, right? And you'll notice that actually a lot of these veils are also marked by a second symbol, which is this, we can see over here, number 4, which is these 3 horizontal white stripes and a red dot, which is known as the Tripundra in Sanskrit or Patai in Tamil. And it's actually a symbol that represents Lord Shiva, who is Murugan's father. And it is a symbol that is used by devotees of the Shaivism tradition in Hinduism. And over here, this piercing here that belongs to Bala, who also is the owner of this magnificent Kavadi over here. Bala wears these piercings on his body, and starting with the spikes, the forehead spikes, the mouthpiece, and this Tripundra here that you see, he wears on his chest. And it's also a symbol that during Thaipusam, you will see a lot of devotees also mark their foreheads with, as well as other various parts of their bodies. And they do so using this sacred ash called vibhuti. And you will also see them mark it on the milk pots which they carry. And so I think Conan just now briefly mentioned that I'm a graphic designer. And I think sometimes when we think about these graphic symbols as a designer, when we're creating, like, let's say a logo, we always talk about how we want to create something that is so simple that anybody can recreate. And that's how it actually is a way of having these symbols being really memorable. And so you can look at how very simple this, 3 horizontal white stripes and a red dot. And every devotee, will make that mark on their bodies when they take part in Thaipusam. So one other thing to note is that I mentioned that these piercings belong to Bala. And he is, even though he takes part in Thaipusam, which is a festival that's dedicated to Murugan, he is a devotee of Lord Shiva. And so during Thaipusam, he will also carry various body piercings that are related to the god that he worships. Let me explain. While the festival is dedicated to Murugan, various devotees who also worship other gods will carry various piercings or embellish their kavadis with these symbols that are associated with other Hindu deities. So, for example, here you have the lingam, which is an abstract representation of Shiva, as well as the trident and the Damaru drum, number 3, if you can see that. That's a throat piece that Bala pins right here. And so you have various other, and then there's, here we have also the 6-sided star and the peacock, which are also symbols that are associated with Murugan, but I'll explain it maybe a little bit later on. But can feel free to come up closer to take a look. And so one thing that I will also mention, you guys can just walk around, but I'll just mention that if you notice the exhibition, we have picked this yellow and this sort of blue-green as the main colors of the exhibition. And if anybody has, gone to Thaipusam, taken part or seen Thaipusam, you'll notice that yellow is a color that a lot of devotees will wear during the procession. They will also wrap the milk pots which they carry with a piece of yellow cloth along with flowers, and they carry that on their forehead. So it's actually it's a very significant sacred color. But visually also during the procession, if you see all these devotees in yellow or shades of yellow and orange carrying the milk pot streaming out of the temples at midnight, it's really quite a sight. And the blue-green we picked because one very important sort of symbol that's associated with Murugan is the peacock. And the peacock is known for these blue-green feathers. Peacock green? Perfect. Okay, so if we just carry on over here, I invite you guys to maybe form a little line here. So what we have here on this platform is actually a disassembled spike Kavadi. This assembled version you can see over there. And I invite you later on after the presentation, you can maybe walk back and forth and try and see which parts constitute where in the whole structure. But I think when we display this like this, it allows us to appreciate every single part of the Kavadi, which is a lot. Yes, and also I think it allows us to really appreciate the details and craftsmanship of various parts of the Kavadi. And so I want to draw your attention to these pieces over here. What you have is there are 8 pieces, 4 sets, which the Kavadi bearer will have on 4 sides of the Kavadi, the front, the back, and the 2 sides. And if you look closely, it consists of a lot of these symbols that are associated with Lord Murugan. I already mentioned the veil, the divine spear, which you can see over there. And then you have here also the peacock, which I also mentioned. And at the top there, you have a flag with the emblem of a rooster. And so there's a story of how these animals come to become associated with Lord Murugan. So I mentioned that he was given this divine spear. And so in one of his battles with these evil demons, one of the demons tries to escape by shape-shifting and transforming himself into a mango tree. But Murugan obviously is not fooled by it, and he throws this spear at the tree, and the tree splits into 2 animals, the peacock and the rooster. And so from then on, those are the 2 animals that become to be associated with Murugan. He's commonly depicted as riding on a peacock. So most of the Hindu gods will have an animal as their mount or their vehicle, and so peacock is Murugan's mount. And he will also be seen holding a rooster flag, which is the flag of his, magnificent army. And let's see. So those are some of the symbols, and also one other symbol that I would like to talk about is this 6-sided star. It's known. It's composed of 2 triangles, one facing sort of the pointing upwards and another one facing downwards. So the one that points upwards is known as a representation of Shiva, who I mentioned earlier is Murugan's father, and the one that points downwards is represents his mother, the goddess Shakti. And so in both of these combined comes a symbol of Murugan. And you guys want to come closer? But in the middle, you will see there's a Tamil character, and it's the character Om, which is the sort of the sacred sound. It's also used in not just in Hinduism but also Buddhism. It's known as the sort of the first sound, the sound of the universe or the cosmos, and it's here rendered in Tamil. So I mentioned it's sometimes rendered in Sanskrit, even in Chinese, but here you have it in the Tamil character. And within it also there is a veil. So you can start to see some of the creativity that goes into composing some of these symbols, where the maker has sort of combined not just typographic elements, but also some of the other more visual elements. And within the six triangles of the star, we have a mantra, here rendered in Tamil as well. It goes Sara Nam Va Ban Va. I'm getting that right. We can. And it's a mantra that evokes. It's meant to be recited during meditation or prayer to call upon Murugan for his protection and for his blessing. And so you read from the top, and it goes clockwise, and it fits into this six-sided star, this hexagram, which is a very, aesthetically, it's a very geometrically perfect and whole sort of symbol, very aesthetically striking. But we can also think of this six-sided geometric diagram as a way for devotees to sort of remember that mantra, to also remember certain teachings of Murugan, because 6 is known as a sacred number, in Murugan's sacred number. He's sometimes portrayed with 6 faces. It's also known that there are 6 sort of abodes in India relating to 6 significant events in his life. One of them being that story I told you where the veil splits the tree into 2. Another one being where the first Kavadi was carried, which Lara will talk about a little bit more later. So we can see how it's these are symbols that are not just decorative, but also hold a great deal of spiritual meaning. Let's see, next one. So here, what we have here is there are 108 spikes. And I mentioned how 6 is a sacred number. You'll also begin to realize that how a lot of these Kavadis are made of components that come in multiples of 6. So you have 108 spikes. What we call Pake Kavadis over here, which are these parts that sort of form a circular, the circular dome of the Kavadi. We call them Pake Kavadi or side Kavadis. And they also come in multiples of 6. So you have, I think, 12 and then 6 over there. And so there's a certain unity in the design, I think, and a certain harmony that comes from also this symbolic number. And here, these spikes here, at the very ends, the tips have the veil with the tripundra, or here's a good example, where you see how the 3 horizontal stripes and the dot have been cut into the shape. And there are also various other emblems that a devotee might choose to put at the end of the spike. So here is, one example of how various people will choose to customize their Kavadi based on, what symbols they might want to have, but also sometimes depending on what the Kavadi maker has, made for this year. What's part of his, what's he sort of designed this year. You can see various different techniques as well. And also, they will also sometimes change these spike emblems or these tips based on also what they can afford. So the Kavadi actually changes, not over years as it's passed down between generations as well. And so these emblems here, I mentioned that Murugan is sometimes portrayed with 6 faces, and sometimes he's also portrayed with 12 arms. And here you have 12 weapons from 9 to 20. And I will not go into too much detail on each one, but you have like the veil, the rooster flag, the swastika, the bell, noose. This is a Vajra weapon, and the elephant goad, the bow and arrow, a club or a mace, the Shakti weapon, and then a trident. And at the very end, actually, is the Om symbol again. But if you look closely, what the designer or maker has done is he has actually integrated the body of the peacock into the Tamil character. And I think there's incredible sort of artistry in how the peacock sort of, blends into it, the curve of the body becoming the curve of the Tamil character. And also, of course, with the veil representing Murugan. And we move on. Here, again, you see the 12 weapons arranged in a circular plate, which is one of the plates which the Kavadi bearer will have on the top structure above his head that he carries. You have, again, the six-sided star with the Murugan's mantra and the Om. So you begin to see how some of these symbols are repeated in the Kavadi. It's almost like a repertoire of graphic language that these Kavadi makers use. And this, again, you see the circular shape of this deck, what we call first deck, second deck, third deck, depending on how many tiers of Kavadi that the bearer decides to carry. You have it's composed of the peacock feathers formed in a circular pattern, right? And again, I mentioned the pake Kavadis that form at the side of it's sort of arranged this way. We can have a closer look later on. But you see again the same repetition of the same symbols, the Om in the center. This time, when over here, the peacock sort of happens in the middle of the character. This one here, the end of the Om actually becomes the peacock's head. So again, I think incredible variation and creativity that goes into the designs of these various pieces. And okay, we'll move on over here. And so this is sort of one set of collection, and this one here is another one. And this is more made in a more traditional handmade manner, whereas this is more sort of industrially produced. These are laser cut by machine. So different makers also choose different methods and techniques and materials. And what I'd like to point out here is that while a lot of the symbols that we've looked at previously are associated with Murugan, here I want to introduce the Yali, which is actually an iconography that is more associated with Indian temples and with a particular god. If you notice here, this is Murugan in various forms, and it's surrounded by an arch. And you'll notice that there are these mythical creatures which we call Yali, sort of on both sides, holding up this arch as well as at the top. And over here, it is rendered, sort of top. The front view that you see at the top is actually rendered here flat, repeated in a sort of rotational, symmetrical form. And that symmetrical form also sort of echoes, I think, the swastika that you see in the middle. And one thing to perhaps think about is how, so the Yali is seen as a mythical creature that is sort of a hybrid animal. Sometimes it has a lion's head, elephant tusk. Sometimes it's a horse's body or a serpent's tail. So there are a number of variations, but it's always known as a creature that is quite ferocious in that sense that it protects the temple. So it sort of guards the hallways or the arches or the entryways to the temple. And it's over here, when you see it like this, and you think about, as a Kavadi bearer to have that above you, I think it's quite an interesting image of this sort of Yali, sort of maybe protecting the Kavadi bearer as they walk, during the Thaipusam procession. And we can begin perhaps to think about how that Kavadi can sort of assume a sort of form of a temple or a temple structure, protecting the Kavadi bearer and also holding up the rest of the Kavadi. And with that, I think maybe I will hand it over to Lara, who will talk a little bit more about the relationship between the architecture, the body, and the Kavadi.
Thank you, Shoin. Yeah, so I will try to transit the tour from this to the big Kavadis composed. But I mean, it's very nice that you already pay attention to all these details. It took us a while also to familiarize with all this, because you can see how just one Kavadi breakdown is made of 400 pieces. And so as such is something extraordinary. And why I mean, I would really like to try to bring you through this, thinking that these are architectures, portable architectures. And because in many of the conversations we had during the preparation of the project and so on, we really understood that it's not very easy to bring all this together. These are really portable construction. They need to be disassembled and reassembled in no time, because Thaipusam is very fast happening and there are thousands of people taking part in it. So it's incredible also the sapient, the knowledge that is embedded in these objects. Also, architecture, I think, for me, brings back to the idea of who conceives and makes things. And so much of this project has involved conversation with the maker, with the bearers, with the piercer. Because Kavadis are not really objects that are designed, I don't know, they are designed in an office and then produced somewhere and then sold, like all the objects almost that surround us. They are an incredible crossover of collaboration between the makers, the artisans that make it, the people who bear the Kavadi, and even the piercer that put it together in the day of the procession and is assembled eventually. So it is an incredible, sophisticated object, very communal, which we have tried to explain a little bit. And also, I mean, I'm very happy that is here with us, Esther, today, who have helped us remodel some of these objects as a way of understanding them, understanding how really they are designed, they are put together. So I have to you have to bear with me with the fact that I have to show you a picture, probably not big enough. But for those of you that maybe are very familiar with Thaipusam, you would know that this is a pal Kavadi, is a type of, probably the most traditional type of Kavadi. And there is one here in exhibition upstairs. I would invite you to go and see it, because it's from the 50s. It is beautifully preserved and all made mostly of natural material. Wood is made with rattan, the top. It basically consists of a pole and an arch that construct a sort of canopy, as if you want a shrine on the central image of effigy of Lord Murugan. It is held on shoulders, and also it carries, you see it below here, 2 milk pots. And the milk pots are the offerings that the devotees bring to the temple. And so in its very simple structure, with the peacock feathers also that moves as people move, it's a sort of portable shrine, right? Which also, I think the idea of the dome perhaps can be also associated to the idea of a hill, because there is the famous legend also of Indumbam, which is very related to Thaipusam. Indumbam is invoked during Thaipusam many times. And Indumbam, it was this giant who carried 2 hills on his shoulders. And in a way, this legend initiated all the tradition in Tamil Nadu of carrying vows and a procession toward the Palani temple, which is dedicated to Murugan, and that eventually it has been imported to Singapore with the diaspora, like Shumin have said, but also that in Singapore had transformed in its own way. So I would say this is form of the Kavadi is probably a kind of more archetypical form. But when we move here, and I would like to bring you the attention to the next Kavadi, we have something similar, although it's a bit of a transformed shape. It has a similar structure in a way that it has a central, more majestic pole. In fact, an important element of this Kavadi is the material of this pole, which is an auspicious wood, specially sourced for this, and also I think it maintains this idea of hanging milk. In this case, is 2 large milk pots. You now, after Shumi have explained many of the symbols, you can see how the devotion to Lord Murugan is carried through the abstraction of the symbols. Perhaps this is not a Kavadi which reconstructs the idea of the shrine so much, but it carries it in a more abstract way. And for sure, it has this idea of the pole and carrying, so possibly also a shape that is close to rural ideas of transporting things, ancient ideas of transporting a rural context. What is very what is the link here, I would say, with architecture? It's in the decoration, because I was speaking with Bala, who conceived this Kavadi together with a friend maker from Malaysia and an artisan from India. They were inspired by a flagpole, which is part of, it's a central element, it's a central architectural element of one of the temple. And so all this decoration that you see here, except for the yale, it's basically exported from there. So there is a lot of interlinks that happen between architecture and these objects. In this case, the decoration. Also, another thing that I would like to say, you can see also how materials play a big role. For instance, over here you have some parts that are cast brass, like the yali face, while these elements that look golden and so on, they are copper plate embossed, a craft that used to be present in Singapore, and right now the production of these have changed. It's more like a transnational collaboration between artisans in India, which craft certain parts. They are ideated here in Singapore, and eventually they are also sent back and finished in Singapore, because gold plating, silver plating is mostly done here. And it's, I mean, every person from Thaipusam would tell you that they do it very beautifully here and so on. So, so this still also an element of transition, using wood, using metal. And then I would like to attempt to talk a little bit about this much more complex kind of Kavadi. And then also this is a Kavadi which we were really very eager to show. I mean, we have tried to represent a certain variety of the different typologies of Kavadis that exist, but it's also something very difficult to do, because it's an evolving tradition. It's extremely creative. There are people that create different forms every year, and there are different ways of doing it. So coming down to the typology, sometimes it's not so easy, but I would say that this is a type. It's called Indumban Kavadi, and this, which is often known as Alavu Kavadi, because Alavu means spike. These elements, the spikes, which, by the way, are made with pieces from the bicycles. There is a lot of recycling of material that happens also in Kavadi, in the making of Kavadis. And this kind of structure which is completely metallic. It's also a very iconic creation of Singapore. It exists basically only here in this form, and is typical, unique, right? So now, quite complex, and if we want to see what are the similarities with the others, of course we see arched structures. We see on top there is a shrine for the deity, a little bit like what is also a very simple Kavadi is. But over here, really, we are in a very, very complex construction. So maybe how I should try to explain it to you is that each of these Kavadis can be maybe divided into two parts. There is an upper part, which is made of concentric decorations, pacche, like what Shumin have explained before. You can see how one of these pacche is almost like a mini Kavadi, right? So there's miniature Kavadis stacked concentrically together. And at the very center of it, there are plates, often star plates, star-formed plates, or square plates, which are the central element which hold these decorations through a bracket. And this bracket that is called una cambi, it's a very nice piece of design. You can only appreciate it when you look at videos of if you go to Thaipusam, because it's what make Kavadi dance. It springs every single element that is in the deck, in the different decks, in movement together with the movement of the dance and the body according to music. So it is a very sophisticated object that has to be very strong, very steady, and at the same time, it has incredible elasticity. Also, other things to notice is we don't see it very well maybe here from on top, but this the top part of the Kavadi, the uchi. In this case, it's a very beautiful piece done by master maker Motilal, who made it like a silver embossed kind of little temple. So the top part, and then I say the lower part. The lower part, it's also very complex. It's basically the intersection of two double arches, and these two double arches, which in the colloquial name that is used during Thaipusam is called the pumpkin. It's the structure that hold together all the 188 spikes, which are beautifully pierced on the body, and that hold the structure of the Kavadi itself on the flesh. So in this case, while the top it reminds very much of the symbology of numbers that Shuming spoke about, the number 6, the number 12. These are geometries that resonate in this construction. At the bottom is more the geometry of 4 or 8. This piece called the ettupate, which is held together by this piece. You can see how many of these connection pieces are so intricate in the decoration. Why? I mean, sometimes you don't even see them so much, but they are essential to the construction of it. And I think the craftsmen are very eager to have them this way. So it is more of a structure of 4 parts, maybe cardinal points. It may be front and back and sides, as it is a person, right? And then what is that holds everything together? So what is the vertical core structure that holds all together? That is a part that is made, it's the only part of the Kavadi that is made in stainless steel, the 4 rods, which join together and are attached to the bell, together also with these shoulder pieces which will maintain things together. In very exceptional cases, when the practitioners that use Kavadi maybe for many years or are really advanced in this type of Kavadi is also pierced without the belt, and this is called arigandam, and it's pierced directly in the waist of the bearer, which is something probably considered also a form of very strong union with the deity. So, so it is I mean, it just takes so long also to tell all the story of how complex it is. So I see it really as a piece of architecture, and what I really understood by talking, especially to the maker Motilal, who is extremely skilled on this and experience, is that he always says that the secret, the beauty of the Kavadi is the setting. The setting, and when he talks about the setting of the Kavadi, he refers very much about the relationship of measurements, how each of these 400 pieces of which the Kavadi is made of are measured and tailored to the body shape of the person who carries it. And which, by the way, because these objects are often kept for more than 20 years and also passed down from one generation to another, the maker are constantly adapting to the body shape of the person. So they are almost living forms, really truly beautiful, and is in this relationship of harmony that there is between the geometries and the sacred numbers that are contained in the design, but also the way each element relates to the entirety of it, which is, I would say, something very important in architecture. And with this, I would like to try also to say something on the other type of Kavadi that we have here, known as Rata Kavadi, or the chariot type of Kavadi. And then I would say maybe this is the one that in a very clear way relates to the processional aspect of Thaipusam, being literally almost a temple on wheels. You can see how also it generally has either 4 or 6 or more hooks, and it is so the bearer would hook this to the back and then transport it to the temple. This is also crafted by Moti and is made of teak wood. So again, a return to wood. It's a material culture also that is transiting, I would say, from wood and more to metal. And the elements are very much related to the architecture of temples in south of India, particularly this tradition of chariots. It probably originates with the idea of transporting deities with chariots from one temple to another. And for instance, in the eve of Thaipusam, the statue of Thaipusam is carried to Tank Road for the procession that will happen the day after. And in fact, this particular chariot here, it's inspired to the silver chariot that does that. That is a famous silver chariot that we most probably some of you have seen before. Other elements that I would like to highlight, the roof, certain elements that are typical of southern Tamil architecture. Also the structure, hexagonal, again, the number 6, there are 6 columns. And then also it's carried, guide the chariot with horses is Lord Brahma. So, I mean, with this, I would like to conclude, and then also perhaps it's good to also think a little bit. I mean, I've always been very fascinated by pilgrimages as a communal act, as the act of walking together. It is something extraordinary, I think, that is happening right now, still up to today in Singapore, because pilgrimage, I think, is something that as humans we have been doing for a very long time, the idea of walking together towards something. So, and also it is not just something that is practiced in Hindu culture. It belongs also to more cultures. I would like to just say that there is Vinita Sina wrote that the enactment of procession potentially serves a multitude of functions, spreading divine power, marking territory, enhancing unity and solidarity within the community, registering religious distinction and difference as well. So I think there are many, many ways in which we can see this. What I hope we as Sistrum, with Shumin, with Ramesh, we have been able to bring here, to unpack here, are aspect of the intricacy and beauty of the crafting of it, the very elevated level of design that is contained in this tradition and could inspire us today, since it's happening. It just happened last week. It was very beautiful to see it. And also, I hope that we have highlighted also how these objects are not just devotional objects, but are also performing objects, are also objects that move, architectures, things that let us imagine much more. And with saying this, I also would like to invite you and let you know that there will be another talk just dedicated on music. Today we switch off the music for the talk, but generally there is a soundscape that is done by Ramesh Krishnan, and the talk will be on the 4th of March. It is totally dedicated to the music of Thaipusam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you, Shumin, as well. I think we actually have, a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes for questions from the audience, if that's okay with both of you. Maybe,
Yes.
Shumin, you can come up to the front. So
a very interesting point on the 108 spears. So that immediately struck me that there are 27 constellations, and each constellation has 4 parts.
Okay.
And in the old days, when they used to do astrological calculations, it was for the 4 parts of the day of 6 hours each, because it was hard to count, to measure time. So that's how the 108 comes. It's very important also because there's one of the temples is in Vaitiswaran in South India, where they have these old nadis or made from old parchment, okay, where everyone's fate is already supposed to be pre-written. And in the yore, or what they how they legendized it, was to say everyone has their own nadi. But when I went there and researched it, I found that there were only 108 sets. Okay, 108 sets. So by using a simple question and answer at the beginning of the session, they will be able to determine the positions of Jupiter and Saturn, and then narrow it down according to, from that, to the particular one of 108, which would then have a very close resemblance to each person's pre-written astrological forecast. So that's quite interesting on that. Brilliant.
Amazing. Yes, thank you for this. I mean, yes, we are, for us also it was so intriguing, but also a confrontation with the fact that, yes, many of these numbers, geometries, and so on connect to cosmological understanding of the world that is quite complex. But yes, so inspiring, right? I mean, how we can understand, have a sense of time, for instance.
Which is one very important Murugan temple in Sri Lanka, Katragaman, okay, which also happens to have a Buddhist temple and a mosque at the same place. Now, if one was to draw on a map a longitudinal line straight up, it would hit Mount Kailash, which is a four-pointed mountain in the shape of a spearhead.
Ah.
So it's very interesting if you're observing it from above. Yeah.
So please stay in touch with us.
Yes, we have to.
Yeah, I
talk
mean,
more.
the whole idea of the exhibition is also to find the other people that can contribute or help us in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that kind comment, sir. And yeah, I mean, definitely a lot to learn from everyone with this.
That Mars or more.
Mhm.
So sometimes the next time that is apparently confused with, linked with Alexander's invasion of northern India. That was in 300 BCE,
Yeah.
right? But when they make this connection between Skanda and Iskandar, then we have come later. Because it was probably Katrikaya and Murugan, which were the original forms.
Yeah.
And then it was mutated because of the fact that Alexander was a fearsome warrior, and then Murugan was also a warrior. So both related to the planet Mars, which was also the Roman connection.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, thanks so much, sir. Let's talk maybe perhaps after this. Definitely a lot to learn from you. If I can, maybe anybody else with a question about the display. Just to know, also we are recording this for to put on YouTube afterwards. So that's why we need if you can speak into the mic, it'd be great, so it can appear on the recording as well. Sorry, that's why I was giving the mic. Anybody else with a question for our presenters? Well, maybe I can ask one.
Sure.
So, I just wanted to, thanks so much again for the taking us through all the motifs and these really important art objects, really. And I just wanted to say, as for the museum, one of the really unusual things about this exhibition, and it was really a great privilege to be able to work with Moti, Bala, and Mike, who are the lenders of these amazing objects you see here in this showcase today, in the course of developing the exhibition, right? So even when we were setting up the space, they were here the whole time, showing us how to assemble these magnificent Kavadi. So I wanted to ask the both of you, as designers, graphic designers, exhibition designers, how do you feel that your the work, the collaboration between you and these members of the community, has it really helped your appreciation of the aesthetics, the design of these Kavadi, of these objects?
You go. Well, no, okay, so, no, for sure, working with the these, 3, 4, 5 actually people that we worked with quite closely, putting this together, has taught us a lot about this practice, and also this practice of the Kavadi, both carrying it as well as designing it, because we did speak to 2 makers, Kuna and Muti, whose various parts of their Kavadis are displayed over there. And I mean, I think one thing, especially with the makers, was learning about how there is how these designs have evolved over time, because some of them have been in the business for a very, very long time. So how they sort of innovate with different techniques based on what materials available, based on what knowledge is available. Aluminium as a material that Singapore has the expertise in, versus copper plate carving, which Singapore doesn't. So learning about that was really interesting. And you discover that there's almost like a whole ecosystem of Kavadi making that exists, whether it's things that are they're designed here, drawn on paper here, but sent to India to be made, and then brought back here to be gold plated here. And then there's also the design that the Kavadi makers sort of design, but then there's also the owners or bearers who then customize it, and so it's very much a co-design process. I think in design today we talk a lot about co-designing with your clients or the public in terms of getting them to workshop ideas and all. And actually, you realize it existed for a very long time. In within some of these traditional objects that are very embedded in long history in the culture.
Right. You said that used to be made only in Singapore, but now it's kind of uh, made in India. The designs are done here, then sent to India to be made, brought back and assembled. So who actually does the assembling of the whole thing? Is there a master Kavadi
Yes.
craftsman who does that? And is it a dying craft in Singapore?
Yeah, so perhaps I haven't been thorough enough to explain you all the parts. And then when I said that there are certain parts that are commissioned or outsourced in India, mostly is the work that require the so-called embossing. Embossing, like what you see in that Kavadi there, or even the uchi, the top. You see there are reliefs and things like that which are done on copper. This is a skill that in Singapore have died. But that's about all, because actually the entire, for this Kavadi, for instance, which is done by Master Motilal, it's almost entirely produced here. So for instance, this kind of engraving on the beautiful engraving on aluminum that you see also there on the, it's all done locally, which means cutting very slowly. They use jewelry blades to do that. And also right now with more modern techniques, they die cut with the computer and so on. So there are, I don't know, it's also, I try to respond also to your question about the inspiration. The very first Kavadi maker I met was Kuna, who has a shop. He has all this ready-made solution. You can make your Kavadi be faster, because I have ready-made place things that you can assemble and so on. Bit like the IKEA or Kavadi. He said also so. So, well, then later we met somebody who is still crafting in the old way, like Mote, and it's very, very sophisticated how these pieces are put together. So, for instance, a Kavadi like this may take at a minimum 6 months, if not more, to be made. And then also, these are objects that get to be made also over time. Over the 20 years, the owner may decide to add more elements to it. And so, if you think of the time that is spent to craft them, of course, that requires a lot of dedication. And I think that is what inspired me very much, how they love this tradition, how they, and with that, they carry a very strong aesthetic, which is so distinctive. And also, I would say, to me, what I see when I see all this transformation of the Kavadis, which started more like more natural kind of material, wood, fibers, and so on, and now go into metal, it reflects also a change in the society, in our material culture right now in Singapore, but also this idea of light, shine, lightness, which is really strong. And if you see now the latest trend of Thaipusam, right, are LED light and new things that are coming up, right? So there is, and yet there is a unified aesthetic because the language of this tradition is common. So I find it very innovative, extremely innovative, yes.
Thanks so much, Laura. I mean, honestly, talking to both you and Shumin, I mean, it sounds like both of you have also kind of fallen in love with Thaipusam and the Kavadi and this practice as well. So it's really, really incredible. Any other questions?
I hope I'm not borrowing from the next talk, but I've got a question about the trance that the bearers of the Kavadi enter into, because these things must be really heavy. And Do you have something to share with us about how they prepare for that procession?
Yeah. So, yes, there is a very long preparation. Okay, in terms of weight, yes, like for instance, I forgot to say the Indumban Kavadi, it's around 20 kg. While this particular Kavadi, I think is around 50 kg, but there are Kavadis of this type that have up to 10 8 decks, and they can become much heavier. So, so I think there are two type of preparations that are required. One being you being initiated to carry Kavadi from when you're young and starting maybe from a simple pal Kavadi and later on going into more complicated and heavier structures. But you need to be very experienced to, for instance, carry the Harikandam, which is difficult, very, very difficult. You need to know how to move. You need to know how to, the Kavadi need to be very fitted on you also. So that's one thing. But then I think at least 1 month before, every person who take part in Thaipusam, and this is not only the devotee who carry a Kavadi, but even the piercer, the maker, they all fast. They all fast. They all enter in a regime of restraint, which is believed to give you the strength to do such things, and it's part of the devotional path. Yeah. So there's a lot of preparation with that.
And during the procession itself, also the role that music and sound plays in helping the Kavadi bearer to carry this, including chanting, drumming, that also plays a very big role. Yeah.
Yes, many of them said that without music it's not possible to endure it, right? And music, historically here in Singapore has also been forbidden for a quite long period of time, and recently, thanks God, it's been resumed.
Any other questions, comments? Do you think this is a successful showcase exhibition? You have any questions?
Thank you. In any case, we will stay here
Yes,
if you want to
good to
approach
ask
us and ask other questions. Very happy.
Well, with that, thank you again, Laura and Shumin, for the excellent presentation. And thank you all for coming and spending your Saturday afternoons here with us. Really appreciate your attention. Just wanted to before we close, wait, let me see if I have anything written down. Yeah, just to say that. So to reiterate again that this really special showcase is presented alongside our current special exhibition. It's a temporary exhibition up on the second floor. It's called Body and Spirit. With your stickers, you can enter there as well. So please have a look. And the older Kavadi that Laura mentioned earlier, showed you a picture of, it's on display in that exhibition as well. So you can go take a look. We have also a series of lectures, including Ramesh's talk on the 4th. And then there will be we are actually getting the three lenders, Moti, Bala, and Mike, to do also a gallery tour here on the 18th. So it'll be a similar format, but with people who actually own and carry these Kavadi. So we're looking forward to that as well. So feel free to the museum closes at 7. Feel free to walk around and come up to our presenters and ask them questions as well. Again, thank you all again, and have a great rest of Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you.